What do you do for scales if you are an intermediate cellist? This is a tough one. You want to play more than one octave D major scale and more than one octave G and C, but you also aren't nearly ready for 3-octave scales yet. How do you hit the sweet spot right in the middle and feel like you are progressing beyond beginner scales, getting lots of benefit and progress from your scale practice, but at the same time, not hitting a wall or getting lost and frustrated because the scales are just too complicated and difficult? It can be frustrating trying to navigate the world of scales for these reasons. Plus, are they truly important? Which one should I focus on? How much time should I devote to them? Is there a certain way I should be practicing them? Is there a particular fingering system, scale book, or magic potion to help me play them better? Let me affirm where you are on your cello journey by assuring you that these are all legitimate feelings and great questions that get asked on a regular basis and with good reason. Scales are important, they're very important, but we as students start to feel like they're a waste of our time, right? That they're taking away precious time that we should be spending practicing our pieces, yes? You're not wrong if you have thought this, and you are not alone. Scales are only important, only helpful and meaningful to our progress if they are practiced and incorporated correctly. So I do have a solid answer to one of those questions at least, and it's the one about the way. Is there a certain way I should be practicing scales? And actually there is. You should be practicing them in groups. You should have a routine of scales and not just a scale that you are focusing on singularly. I will tell you the story here at the end if you are interested in how I began to formulate this idea. What I can tell you for now is that yes, the way you are practicing scales is probably wrong. I feel safe saying that because I practiced them wrong for a very long time. So if you have been doing it the single scale way, congratulations, you're in the same camp as me. Playing a single scale in a single key, no matter how many variations on rhythm you do, yes, I said that and I meant it, will get you very little. You might as well just jump to the pieces. Yes, I said that too. I mean, what is the difference between playing the piece and playing the single scale that goes with it? I mean, a scale just has 8 notes, right? At this level, at this intermediate level, there isn't much of one. Hi, if we are meeting for the first time, my name is Clay from the Cello.online, and this video is all about scales, 2-octave scales, and how to begin to group them together to really get the most out of practicing them. For a free download of the scales I am mentioning in this video, as well as my suggested fingerings, visit my website and get a copy. It's 100% free, and it has the scales printed out and ready to go, along with links to play-along videos and a link back to this video. So when do I start introducing 2-octave scales to my private cello students? Well, it depends. A lot of time I try to introduce it before we get to the end of book 1, where students start to play extensions in minuet number 2. Hopefully we have already studied the 2-octave C scale because of the etude number 14, and then had some time while doing Happy Farmer and minuet in C to also do a 2-octave D scale in preparation for the extensions in minuet number 2. Some teachers introduce extensions back in Go Tell Aunt Rhody with the Rhody variations. If that is the case and students are doing well with the extensions, then yes, D scale is great to introduce while you're playing through Rhody. But just a side note about doing extensions and doing the Rhody variations, when you're doing those, it's easy to cheat and not really involve the whole hand in the extension because we're just talking about getting first finger back. But it does teach that most important part of the extension, which is getting the whole step between first and second finger. Sometimes students are in a school orchestra or a community group that is already introducing pieces that require shifting, and so it's good to start practicing that stuff on the scales, shifting to new positions and registers on the cello. If we're talking purely going by the Suzuki books, though, then again, somewhere after the number 14 etude in book 1 is a good place to start. I always think concepts should be introduced on scales before we get to them in a piece. Now, if we're talking about 2-octave G major and 2-octave C major going up the D string for the second octave, then somewhere after shifting gets introduced in Book 2 is a good place to introduce these. Students start shifting to second position in Book 2. Fourth position, I think, is actually easier than second position, so if we're starting to shift even a little bit, you can go ahead and start playing 2-octave G major scale. I think it's a good thing to introduce. But every student is different and every path is different, so if this is where you are here at the beginning of Book 2 and you're not doing 2-octave G and 2-octave C, I wouldn't worry too much about it. You have plenty of time. So let's start with the first scale routine I think you should incorporate into your playing here, which is 2-octave D major paired up with 2-octave C major. And I'll tell you why these are so great to pair together. Both of these 2-octave scales are all in first position, and they have key signatures which we should be comfortable with at this point in our learning. Being in first position means exactly that, a single position down low where we are used to playing, and there is no shifting when we start playing these scales because we haven't been introduced to shifting yet. And here comes the main reason these two together are so good for your playing. It's because they are only a step apart. D major is here on the fingerboard, and C major is here. Some notes they have in common, and a few are different, and this is where the magic happens. Because they are only slightly different, it forces your brain into a new kind of concentration. It's a new tonality, completely different key, and you must focus on where to put your fingers based on that specific tonality, which is sometimes the same as the other and sometimes different, even though you're playing on all the same strings. Both scales involve all 4 strings, but again, your fingers go down in different places. Sometimes on all 4 of those strings. Why am I saying this so many times? Let's compare to a slightly less powerful pairing. Still good for you, still should practice it sometimes, but easier and less beneficial. For this, I'm going to use 2-octave G major paired up with 2-octave C major going up the D string. In other words, these two scales are exactly 1 string apart. You play G major 2-octave scale going up to 4th position. Then you take the exact same fingering and simply do it down a string. As you can see, the patterns of dots representing the notes and finger patterns is exactly the same, just on different strings. This is actually kind of easy for our brains to figure out. In fact, you should already be doing this as you are finishing up number 8 and 9 in Book 1 to prepare you for number 10, where you start to play on the G string. Playing the pieces down a string is a great way to start hearing different tonalities and getting used to playing on those strings. I don't want to discount this because I use it all the time. It's really important. But we are talking about what comes next, though, what comes after that, and how can we get the most out of our scales. What should we focus on as an intermediate player to expand our tonal knowledge and fingerboard geography? When you compare that to the D major and C major pairing, you can see the difference and why the D major C major pattern is much more of a disruption, therefore much more benefit to our development. And this is great news that we can start to improve our intonation in a big way without shifting. Now, once you do start shifting around for a few pieces and are comfortable with the idea of the motions and getting toward the middle of Book 2 or pieces like them, then I suggest you do up your scale routine. Again, scales should be introduced before the pieces they correspond to. So I suggest around this time that you start doing the G major, C major, of course, like I mentioned earlier. Like I said, it's good and of benefit. More importantly, start pairing up G major and A major. Like our first pairing in this video, they are a step apart, and the A major gets you introduced to 5th position. 5th position is great because now we are starting to think beyond 4th position, starting to think about a more thumb position type fingering without going into thumb position. It's important that we learn 5th position while leaving the thumb behind the neck. Notice my thumb is back here. I have my first finger on the F sharp. Once you're ready to move beyond A major, I would start by adding B flat major and then begin adding the relative minor scales. Now, I did promise you a little background of how I started to formulate this idea in my mind and realized I was playing scales wrong. And I decided to put that in a separate video, which you can watch right here. And if you're looking for the play along scale video, you can watch that right here.